Many of us are bedtime theologians. For good or for ill, that's one of the few times that I'm alone with my thoughts. And in those 2 quiet moments at the end of the day when sleep has not yet rescued me, sometimes epiphanies come. Often I get panicky. Always I have questions, and there's no better or no worse time for those big what-ifs. I asked most of West Row members to tell me the story of how they came to believe, and all of the stories were remarkably similar to Sam Phelps's. One night he said, "I was lying in bed and I was overcome with fear, a fear of hell. I knew the only way to not go to hell was Jesus. I knew that it's not a question of whether the Lord lives. The question was his blood shed for me? I hope it was, but no man has that certainty. And on some level, absolutely, that fear is still there." I can't count how many times I've thought similar things. How many nights did I spend sweaty and panicked and drained of tears because I thought I might go to hell for being gay, for being me? Other sins I had repented of, but this one did not go away. It was different. It was fixed. Before I went to Westboro, I expected that its members would take every opportunity to remind me that I was going to hell. But in my 4 days in Kansas, nobody ever asked me about my sexuality. Nobody says a word about my salvation except for John, who at one point generically and blandly says, "You know we have to tell you you're going to hell." The closest we come to discussing my faith and my fate is as we leave Fred Phelps' office. Steve, the PR guy, is walking us back to his house. "You're searching for something, aren't you?" he says gently. "I am, of course, but I don't respond." He glances at me. "I really hope you find what you're looking for." He says this so sweetly that for as many seconds as it takes for the words to form in my mind, I think, what if they're right? But just as quickly I know this in my heart. Their God is not my God, and their faith is not my faith, and there can be no middle ground. I cannot believe in a fear-based faith. I don't want to be scared into submission. If Topeka teaches me anything, it is that many words, healing, health, wisdom, love, God, mean such different things to different people. It's almost as if we were speaking entirely different languages, and it's almost as if people are preaching totally different faiths. Westboro was very eye-opening for me. I actually skipped over one part where I write about how charming these people were, despite the signs that they hold. They were incredibly hospitable and even nice. We talked about Glee, we talked about Harry Potter, we talked about the latest movies. I went over to one person's house for dinner one night, pizza dinner, they invited us over. And as they were asking what we would like to drink, I said, "Well, what do you have?" And he says, "Coke, Diet Coke, Pepsi, Diet Pepsi, iced tea," and the list goes on. And he pauses and he says, "Oh, but we don't serve Kool-Aid because that freaks people out." And there was such a sense of humor and self-awareness that I didn't expect to find. And it really humanized Westboro for me. I think there are a lot of reasons to oppose what they teach, not just the language, but the manner in which they go about their business. But what I realized is that my colleagues in the media have painted a caricature of this church. There are many good reasons to oppose them, but we should find the right ones. There are many true reasons, but we should depict them for who they really are. I want to share another surprising chapter with you. I entitled this chapter Freedom to Marry. And this chapter tells the story of a Presbyterian pastor who identifies as gay. He lives in the Midwest. He asked me not to say where because he could lose his job if his denomination found out that he was gay. I entitled the chapter Freedom to Marry because he made a choice to marry a woman. His name is Jake, her name is Elizabeth. And I want to share a little bit of their story with you. "Every woman fantasizes about the ideal husband," Elizabeth tells me one afternoon as we sit in their tidy living room. "I had my list of 15 things. She wanted, among other things, a guy with strong faith. She wanted to spend much of her life abroad, and she hoped to work with her husband in some kind of Christian ministry. She did not want to live in the suburbs. She didn't need him to have a high-paying job. And in my mind, she says, Jake fit all of those." She pauses and half smiles. "I forgot to put heterosexual on the list." In 2004, Elizabeth met Jake at a Christian conference. She thought he was cute, but given that they lived in different time zones and he was planning to move to the other side of an ocean, it seemed nothing would happen. A couple of years later, she too moved to Asia, and she, of course, thought of him. But on the day she arrived, he sent out a mass email announcing that he was moving in a month. It was not meant to be. At a lunch at Jake's house shortly before his move, she suddenly had the feeling something was wrong. She went into the bathroom to think and pray. I felt at that moment he was struggling with homosexuality, and I had to pray for him, she says. Then I thought, maybe it's for the best that he's leaving. I wasn't sure he was gay, but I definitely did not want to get involved with a gay guy. So their mutual friends, for some reason, encouraged them to get together. And Jake says, I started thinking about her and praying for her. But it also popped into my mind, I don't think I want to kiss her. He wrote her a letter asking if she would date him. And she emailed right back, yes, definitely. But even as they began emailing back and forth every day, the question of his sexuality still niggled at her. She didn't know for sure that he was gay. He had referred in his letter to some mysterious thing that might hurt her. Was that the thing? There was no way she was going to bring it up. She rationalized, if he's gay, he wouldn't want to date me. They went on a 10-day date because they were living in separate countries, and on that date, he finally told her. When he told me that, she says, it was the last thing I wanted to hear, but I was somewhat prepared. It was easier for me that he was so upfront. They've been remarkably candid with each other. She asked him about his history with guys. There was none. He had never done anything. He was, in his words, technically a virgin. And they've been remarkably candid, and 7 months later, they got married. In my days with Jake and Elizabeth, they never seemed less than open and honest. They encouraged me to ask anything I want, but proved that I can never bring myself to ask about sex. And so it is a great, if somewhat awkward relief when Jake suddenly blurts out, let's talk about sex. Okay, I reply. It's been really good, he says. Okay, I say. One of my fears was that our sex would not match my fantasies. A lot of that is probably just the nature of fantasy. But what we have is a lot better. It's definitely different, he says. You know, it's been very different from what I expected, less intense. It's not like pizza or French fries. It's more of an acquired taste that come to like even better. He pauses. It's like olives. His wife is sitting there and she's looking bewildered. Which is probably how I look moments later when Jake compares his fantasies to dime store novels and his real sex life with his wife to real literature. Bizarre metaphors aside, the fact that their sex life has been by both accounts not just functional but enjoyable and real, and who can fact check that, raises the question of whether Jake has experienced any kind of reorientation. His answer is no. He doesn't really think much about homosexuality these days, nor do they talk about it, except when people like me ask. He still feels an attraction to men, but the urge to act on that attraction has diminished. Anyway, there are other things for them to think about now. Jake and Elizabeth are trying for their first child.